Welcome back into another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I am Steven Serda, joined as always by my guy, Rocky Magaña. Kramer Sanson in the background, helping us keep this thing moving. And the Kansas City Chiefs in week 7 of the NFL season improved to 6-1 on the year with a 31-17 win over the Los Angeles Chargers. And Rocky, there's a lot to get to from today's game. I think Chiefs fans should feel really happy this evening, and really you should kind of be floating going into next week as you get another matchup against the Denver Broncos before that huge matchup against the Miami Dolphins in Germany. And I think the case can be made that today's performance against this Los Angeles Chargers team, that kind of a season on the line type of game for this team that desperately needed a win and needed to put something together today against the Chiefs. They fall again and are 2-4 now in the season. The Chiefs are 6-1 atop the AFC still. And I think this was their best all-around performance of the entire season. I don't know how you feel, Rocky, but that's at least how I feel coming out of today's game, especially the second half of that game.
I am jazzed up, Steven Serda. Oh my God. First of all, Sean Merriman chirping on Twitter or X, whatever, all week long about how Arrowhead is quiet. It wasn't anything before Marty Schottenheimer 40 years ago. Only 40 years of loud history in Arrowhead Stadium. Shut your mouth, Sean Merriman. They named a rule after you because you do too much juice. Your body fell apart 1 year off of the juice because you were juicing your entire life and you're nothing without it. You were out of the league shortly after being off the juice, and you came at Chiefs Kingdom, and guess what? The Chargers charged the game away yet again. Guess what? Defense stepped up in the second half. Travis Kelce, oh my gosh, I tell you what, they say that new love makes you feel young again, and he looked like he was 22 out there running around on the field today. I mean, he looked like a young man on fire. Holy moly, Steven Serda. The Chiefs have a 3-game lead in their division as we come to the halfway mark in the season. We're not even halfway through the season yet, and the Chiefs have a 3-game lead on their division. The Chargers are basically out of it. The Raiders are horrible. The Denver Broncos are led by a Keebler elf with a huge like ego complex, and I mean, this might be the worst division in football aside from the Chiefs. I mean, we might win the division by 8 games at this rate. I mean, so it's a great day to be a Kansas City Chiefs fan.
So I say that I think this was the most impressive performance of the Chiefs season thus far. And I think it was because it felt like the first time this season where this thing wasn't totally in control from the Chiefs, at least defensively, because we saw that big Joshua Kelly touchdown run in the first half, and it's just back and forth in that first quarter. And I was like, oh, okay, it's this kind of game today. And I was ready for that. But no, the Chiefs defense absolutely shut the Chargers down in the second half of this game. And obviously, Patrick Mahomes, you mentioned Travis Kelce. Mahomes just absolutely lights out today. This is the kind of game we've been looking for from Patrick Mahomes. So all the doubters and everybody who just wants to find a reason to doubt Patrick Mahomes in this offense, they could all shut up at least for a week because he was playing absolutely unconscious today. Like, had an interception that wasn't a great throw. Probably shouldn't have made it. Felt like Mecole Hardman could have done a little bit more to go after that ball to try to keep it from getting picked, but it happens. Other than that, 32 of 42 on the day, 424 yards. Travis Kelce, absolutely insane. 12 catches on 13 targets for 179 yards and a score. MBS finally makes an appearance. He's got 84 yards and a touchdown, including a 46 yarder. Rashee Rice, another strong performance, another touchdown. Just easily the best all-around performance of the Kansas City Chiefs season. And there's going to be a lot made out of this game because we know that Chargers defense has not been good this season. And, we saw the Chiefs really struggle other than that game against the Bears offensively. It's kind of been a work in progress, but I'm not saying that this is because the Chargers defense just isn't good. We know it's not good, but the difference today was that Patrick Mahomes still spreading the ball around all over the place, but they were creating explosive plays finally. And it finally looked like the offense was in rhythm. And Mahomes was getting outside the pocket, making plays with his legs, but he was also hanging in the pocket and finding guys downfield. And we've talked about it for weeks, Rocky, where some of this stuff is wide receivers not being able to get open, but some of it is just Patrick Mahomes not trusting the guys that are out there. And I think today was a huge step forward for Patrick Mahomes in trusting the players that he has out there on the field, because he was spraying the football all over the field, and it was the best performance of his season. I don't think it's even close.
I think that Mahomes went back and watched the tape from last week, and he saw that when he lost faith in his receivers in the second half on the outside, that they were open, and he missed some shots and he missed some plays. And he went back and he said, "Okay, listen, these guys aren't perfect, but they're what I got to work with." And Travis Kelce said this week on his New Heights podcast that Matt Nagy challenged the entire offense this week and told them, "Guys, it's time to stop talking about playing better and go out there and play better." And this was the week where they went out there and played better. It looks like they rose to the challenge. MVS finally shows a sign of life. And I mean, you saw it on his route running. I mean, he was running crisp routes on the outside that we haven't seen him run. He's been looking kind of lazy on his routes on the outside. You saw Sky Moore, even though he still can't produce as a wide receiver, when Mahomes was scrambling, he threw a heck of a block and held up that block long enough for Mahomes to pick up the long third down play. It's the little things that they did today that led to incremental success. And one thing about Patrick Mahomes I don't think gets nearly enough pop. We always talk about his legs. He uses his legs to pick up clutch first downs all the time. What we don't talk about enough is how he uses his legs to get wide receivers open. On that insane throw he made to MVS back across his body to pick up that first down, and he was starting to scramble. He was scrambling, and the cornerback peeled off of MVS to try to come up and make a play on Mahomes. And Mahomes kept his eyes downfield. And the moment that guy peeled off of him, Mahomes slung it in between the defenders and picked up the first down. And that's something that not everybody else can do. You saw Justin Herbert try that in the red zone, and it was an incomplete pass. You see Josh Allen run with the ball, his eyes are down. There's not another quarterback in the league that can run guys open with his legs.
Yeah, and I think that was just another thing today where it felt like Mahomes was locked in a way that has kind of been lacking at times so far this season. But I think you're so right with him running and getting guys open by utilizing his legs because of those throws. And we just haven't seen a lot of that stuff connect this season. A lot of it's been buy time. Look for Kelce and kind of overlook everybody else and not make a play. And then it's just frustrating because it's okay. There's another 3 and out for the Chiefs offense. That was not the case today. I know they slowed down a little bit in the second half, but when they needed to in the fourth quarter, they put it together, and just an all around performance, top to bottom, from special teams, defense, offense today. Just a really, really impressive game by the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Chargers that I think are truly the only team in the division that can challenge them, that can give them any kinds of problems. And, we saw the Raiders go down today. They're 3-4. The Broncos pick up a win, whatever. It's against the Packers. I don't think the Packers are a particularly good football team. And now the Chargers are 2 games under 500 again. And their defense looks like it's one of the worst defense in the NFL right now. Like, this was just a huge game for the Kansas City Chiefs. As we get closer and closer to that game against the Miami Dolphins, they needed to get this kind of performance under their belt. Offensively, they needed this kind of game where it looked like the trust was building and where it looked like people were making plays. And it's not just Travis Kelce having to carry everything offensively and Patrick Mahomes trying to be a superhero and doing that stuff, or Isaiah Pacheco ripping off long runs, which I thought Isaiah Pacheco, he had the long run called back because of a penalty today, but he was really impressive today. Just all around contributions from everybody that you want to see contributions from. And I think that's really the biggest win coming out of this thing. So I want to get in to the offense a little bit more. I want to get into the defense a little bit more. I want to talk about the guys that we were impressed by, because there was a lot of them today. But let's start with just early in the game offensively. He finds MVS for the long touchdown, and early on it's back and forth. I already mentioned the Joshua Kelly long touchdown run, but the Chiefs are able to kind of put it together, and Travis Kelce just absolutely goes out of his mind in the first half of this game. At halftime, Travis Kelce had 9 catches on 9 targets for 143 yards and a touchdown at the break, Rocky. And And I think they were talking about on the broadcast, like Mahomes hit a completion to Travis Kelce, I think 29 straight times, and then the 30th finally fell incomplete. And it was a chance. It was a ridiculous throw by Mahomes and a ball that Kelce had an opportunity to catch, but he just couldn't come up with it. It was a good play by the Chargers defender. He knocked it out of his hands at the last minute. But Travis Kelce, after starting a little bit slow and me being a little bit worried about his age and finally being banged up for the first time in his career, like Travis Kelce, the last 2 weeks, just like, oh no, that's just the Travis Kelce that we're all used to seeing. The Chargers, who play the Chiefs twice a year, who get cooked by Travis Kelce every single season, could do absolutely nothing to stop him. There was no answers. And I know in the second half, they were like, fine, we'll put Derwin James on Travis Kelce. Well, Derwin James is a good player. Travis Kelce still cooks him every year too. Like the Chargers just had absolutely no answers for the Chiefs Hall of Fame tight end.
Yeah, and I love his touchdown there. It's like a reverse, like little like tight end tush push, right? You got the whole entire offensive line behind him, just shoving him in. And yeah, you're right. And the thing you love to see about Travis Kelce, I almost feel like when Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes are so good at this point. You remember when you were a kid and you're with your best friend in your front yard and you're just throwing the football back and forth and you want to see how many times you could go in a row without dropping the ball, and you tried to up that number each time. Even though that was a tough catch by Travis Kelce, the moment he dropped it, you had that same feeling that when you were a kid, he was banging his fist on the ground like, no, no, no. We only got to 29, like we could have got to 30, right? Yeah, that feeling that even though they dropped that one pass, that they were like disappointed in themselves because they know that they are that much better. And I mean, the Chargers defense is bad, but Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, they're another level, even over good defenses. And you gotta start to wonder and worry if you're a Chargers fan, because you brought Brandon Staley in because he was a defensive guru, and you're putting a complete garbage defense out on the field right now. Like his seat has to be super hot at this point. But yeah, no, I mean, and you just watch this offense clicking from top to bottom. Aside from Kelce, everybody was playing off of each other today, and it was just it was the first time that you see this offense clicking and working as a cohesive unit all year long.
It was without a doubt the performance that we needed to see from this team, because we've been talking about it for weeks now. And I think that there started to be some pushback a little bit around the Chiefs offensively, where especially people who aren't watching every single game like Chiefs fans are, that aren't locked into every single snap offensively of what this team is doing. From the outside looking in, you're like, oh, well, they only put up 19 points against the Denver Broncos. They only did this against that team. They only did this against that team. It seems like Mahomes is really struggling and throwing interceptions and making bad decisions. And like, while all of that stuff is true on paper, if you were watching the games, you could see like why it wasn't working. And you were like, it's there. Like, it's there. They just got to figure it out. They got to get this thing moving in the right direction. They got to find the chemistry and they got to get it into rhythm. And they finally did that today. And I think I really want to get into the defense too, because I think this was the most impressive performance by the Chiefs defense this season. But before we do, I got to mention Mecole Hardman before we move off of the offense, because Mecole didn't have a strong start to the game and his return to the Kansas City Chiefs. But when they needed him to make a play, he makes two huge plays in the fourth quarter. One of them is a 58-yard punt return. And that's what I was talking about all week long at Arrowhead Pride was, Mecole Hardman coming back to the Kansas City Chiefs. It's cool. I didn't hate the move. I get it. It's a guy that knows the offense and come in right away. Costs you nothing to bring him back, basically. And without Justin Watson, with him banged up for a while, Mecole Hardman gives you a little added depth and insurance there. But he's not a player at this stage of his career. And based on everything that we know about him prior to him going to the New York Jets, like, he's not a guy that I want to see taking significant snaps away from the other wide receivers that we need to figure out how to utilize. But as a return man, we know how effective he can be that way. In the past couple of years, he's returned less and less because he's been a bigger part of the offense and they've needed him more in that regard. But what he did today in the fourth quarter on that 58-yard punt return is something that the Chiefs have been missing for a long time. They have not had really since he was the main punt returner, or like even Tyreek Hill, like, they have not had a reliable, explosive playmaker in the return game. And if he is that full time for this team, that is the absolute best role that Mecole Hardman can have. And we saw a glimpse of it today. Like, he's going to return a kick at some point for a touchdown this season, and he can make those big splash plays. And that is the best role that he is suited for on this team. So if you're going to sprinkle him in offensively, that's great. I don't need to see significant snaps from Mecole on offense, but the return game, that's where he can make an impact on this team. And that's where he can be the biggest difference maker for the Chiefs.
100%. Yeah, he looks a lot better on jet sweeps than anybody else the Chiefs has. So in those limited snaps, yeah, give him those gadget plays. But it's almost like back in the day when the Chicago Bears tried to turn Devin Hester into an actual wide receiver, and it never panned out. Like, he was never an actual skill position player, but you put him as a kick returner, and he's one of the best in the league. Now, obviously, Mecole Hardman's not Devin Hester, but he's a lot better than anything the Chiefs have back there. And he is an electric guy who has straight line speed, which is what you need on a punt return. You need a guy to catch the ball and get upfield really, really fast and hit a seam. And that's exactly what Mecole Hardman is. Like, he's that guy who's going to run 4-3 in a straight line reliably every single time. And so they said that he brought a good energy and a good mojo back to the building this week as well, that, you know, he's one of everybody's favorite guys in the locker room. You don't want to undersell having just the overall morale boost that something like that has on a team as well. I'm sure it was good feelings all the way around, all over the building this week, having him back, you know, and they got him back for basic pennies. People who want to say, you know, oh, they gave up too much for him because they gave up, what, a 6th-round pick. Like, guys, you've been spoiled because Brett Veach is one of the best drafters in the NFL. A 6th-round pick is nothing. It's peanuts, especially to get an electric kick returner like that. Like that is a steal, especially when you're considering that, you know, that what we had in contrast to that was Dontrell Washington last week. Like guys, you got to think about the contrast a little bit too of what we had versus what we have now versus what we gave up to give it. It was a no-brainer by Veach in the front office, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was an immediate impact. And I was really happy for him after Mecole Hardman, and you can find this on From the Podium on the Arrowhead Pride podcast page, where he spoke to the media earlier this week and talked about last season, that late season injury that kept him off the field, that we didn't really know because the Chiefs are so tight-lipped about injuries, that he actually spent time in the hospital over that injury and said he couldn't walk for several days. And it was legitimately terrified about like what was going on with his body. And that's something that we didn't know about until he told us earlier this week, because the Chiefs don't like to talk about injuries publicly at all. And that's something for him to return to Kansas City. And he had a couple of tough moments in the game, but to come up with those huge moments in the fourth quarter and to show why the Chiefs brought him back and why it made sense for them, I just thought that was a really cool moment. And then to cap it off after the 58-yard punt return, he's got the 3rd and 7 catch to keep the drive alive and keep the Chiefs in the red zone. Then Isaiah Pacheco follows it up a couple of plays later with the game-sealing touchdown. Like, just couldn't have written a better fourth quarter script for the Chiefs offensively. And I was pretty juiced for Mecole Hardman today, and just really for the Chiefs' overall offensive performance. But also, Rocky, we got to get our weekly Rashee Rice mention in here. I know I quickly mentioned him already, but I'm falling in love with Rashee Rice. Like, I have fallen head over heels for the way that dude plays football, man. He is so fun to watch. Like, that, first off, ridiculous pass by Patrick Mahomes, as you can see if you're watching us on the live stream right now, the touchdown pass to Rashee Rice. Like, ridiculous pass and placement by Patrick Mahomes, but we're seeing those tight window throws to Rashee Rice happen a lot more now because Mahomes has got a lot more trust in him, and Mahomes knows, like, oh, this guy's a baller. I need to get the ball in his hands because he can make things happen after he gets the ball in his hands. And we saw him do that again multiple times today. Saw him just absolutely trucking Chargers. Like, he is one of the more exciting Chiefs players that can pick up yards after contact than I feel like I've seen in a while. Like, at the wide receiver position, he is a handful to bring down, and he just is so much more explosive than it seems like he should be. Every time he touches the ball and he turns upfield, I'm like, oh, I wasn't really expecting him to do that quickly. Like, he's just a lot more explosive than I think anybody anticipates, and that helps him keep creating these big chunk gains for the Chiefs every week. And we continue to see his role expand. But man, they've got a player on their hands, and you can see it week after week now. Like, this isn't a fluke thing. Like, he is a legitimate playmaker for this offense, and as his role continues to expand throughout the season, I am so excited for him moving forward for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh man, 100%. Like I was a little bit worried about Rashee Rice early in the season, and a lot of people you see online talk about moving him to the outside. I think the Chiefs just keep him on the on inside on the slot, make him the big slot. He's a mismatch there. I mean, when he gets the ball in his hands, he gets that field fast, like you said. Like he's like a bull in a china shop with that ball in his hands, man. He is just like busting through. I mean, making Chargers defenders look like they're like, glass menageries on your grandma's, in her china cabinet, just busting through everything. That was an NFL catch he made in the end zone. That is a lot harder catch than people realize. Getting both your feet down through contact, having strong hands like that to make that catch. That was a difficult grab by him. And that is something that I think early in the season, he had those drops, right? And that might have been a catch he doesn't make early in the season. But we're seeing him mature. We're seeing him get better week after week. He is stacking good games. I mean, he got 5 out of 6 targets for 60 yards and a touchdown. 12-yard average is nothing to scoff at, Steven. And he's that when you look at wide receivers, like he's the Chiefs wide receiver 1 right now. Is he a true wide receiver 1 yet? No, he's not. Is he going to get there? Who knows? But he's a very productive NFL wide receiver, and he's only getting better, and he is dangerous with the ball in his hands. And I think, like, going back to him being in the slot, I think that's just the best place for him, because you get him the ball with forward momentum, on a slant route or a crossing pattern or something like that. Just you get him with catching the ball with forward momentum, and then you just let him get upfield with the ball in his hands and just be the wrecking ball, that he is.
And the issues with drafting and developing wide receivers over the past few years with this Chiefs team, and in Mecole Hardman, in Sky Moore, like, to see them have a guy in Rashee Rice, it's like, it looks like they finally hit on one. Like, it looks like they finally got it right. Like, Brett Veach, year after year, keeps figuring out and seemingly getting better and better at this drafting and scouting process. And they keep finding players. And Rashee Rice looks like a legitimate playmaker for the Chiefs. And I just can't wait to continue to watch how he develops as the season goes. And yeah, that was a really, really good point about his early season drop issues, and just the confidence that we're seeing him build week after week right now is just so exciting. But we got to get to the defensive side of the ball. And I do want to remind you guys, if you listen to us on the podcast page, make sure you stick around after the commercial break. We'll have all the post-game press conferences available for you immediately following the show. But defensively, the first quarter really for the Chiefs was like, first off, first 2 series, Rocky, I don't know if it was an issue for you, but here in Kansas City, CBS was force feeding us the Browns-Colts game and split screening the Chiefs game. So I didn't really get to get locked into the first couple of drives of this game, and I was really frustrated about it. But after they actually put the Chiefs up on the big screen, thankfully, thanks CBS, and we got to see this thing start rolling. And the Chiefs defense early on, bending, giving up an explosive touchdown, and struggling as much as we've seen them struggle so far this season. Now, I think the Chargers had a really good early scripted game plan, and they knew, like, we got to get out early. We got to score points. We got to challenge them and test them and keep them on their heels. And the Chargers were getting to the ball quick, trying to keep the offense moving, and keeping the Chiefs just with their just on their heels. And it was really effective early on for the Chargers. But once the Chiefs settled down defensively, I just got all that confidence back. And I've never been more confident that everything we've been saying about this defense is absolutely true. Like, I know the Chargers aren't necessarily an elite team, and we'll get an opportunity to see them going again against a truly elite offense in a couple of weeks when they take on the Miami Dolphins. But I was so impressed with the performance from the Chiefs defense today to have that early game struggle. And for the first time this season, really have a team kind of expose your defense in a way that it hasn't so far. I thought it was incredible that they came out in the second half and just totally blanked the Chargers, just totally shut them down in the second half to where Justin Herbert, this superstar quarterback, could not accomplish anything in the second half, could get absolutely nothing going. And credit to Steve Spagnuolo again, but man, this defense is really, really good, Rocky.
I mean, this defense is really, really good, especially in the second quarter. And that's like, here's the thing is it's not how you start a game, it's how you finish it. And they shut the door in the fourth quarter when the Chargers had the ball and they were trying to drive back down the field to make it a game. The Chiefs came in and they slammed the door shut. They stepped on their throat. They had that killer instinct that we think in years past they've kind of missed a little bit. In the second half, the Chargers had 115 yards total offense in the second half. That's nothing. Like most of that came on one drive they had. Like the Chiefs completely blanked them. They turned the ball over. There was a couple of miscues early in the first half, early on, like we talked about. Josh Palmer had a huge first half against them. He had 5 receptions for 133 yards. Like you don't want to see any one wide receiver gas you that much. But I think the reason why he was so successful is because they were focusing on Keenan Allen and they held Keenan Allen to 55 yards. And if you go into a game and you say, okay, I'm going to hold Keenan Allen to 55 yards and I'm going to hold Austin Eckler to 45 yards on the ground, I mean, like, I'm going to take that every single time. Austin Eckler had 1 yard receiving in this game. And I know he got injured, but I mean, he had 15 touches before he went out of the game and they held him to 46 total yards on 15 touches. Like, that's awesome. You shut down Keenan Allen and you shut down Austin Eckler, I'm going to tell you, you're going to win by 2 scores a majority of the time. This defense looked great. The pass rush was complimentary of each other. Yeah, it wasn't like the most like lights out game for Chris Jones, but he was freeing up every other guy along that line, who basically every other guy along that line got a sack today. Thank you, Chris Jones, because you were taking the double team and they were beating their one-on-ones, which is the recipe for success for this Chiefs pass rush, is that Chris Jones is going to get double teamed every single time. What does that mean? Everybody else has to win their one-on-one matchups, and that's what happened today. Especially, we'll get in a minute. I know we're going to touch on it, but Charles Omenihu, great first impression.
Well, and I think that's part of why I was so impressed by them, because we saw Justin Reed and Brian Cook get cooked in the first half. And I think if you could point to one thing in the Chiefs secondary that has struggled at times this season, it's their safeties. And Mike Edwards continues to make plays, and Brian Cook's a player that I still think is really talented, still has his moments, but he has been up and down this season. But Mike Edwards has been a really nice addition for that secondary that doesn't get enough credit. Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, obviously still really good players. Jalen Watson had some struggles today, but also had some nice moments. Kind of just an up and down game for the secondary, but they absolutely shut the Chargers down in the second half. And yeah, I think what was most impressive about this defensive performance is what you were saying, Rocky, is that Chris Jones wasn't totally dominant today. Chris Jones finally didn't get a sack for the first time this season. Like, we've seen him just since he came back and ended his holdout, he has been nothing but the dominant, best defensive player on the team and has just wreaked havoc on everyone. And Chris Jones was creating pressure today and still had an impact that way. He doesn't wind up getting a sack, but Charles Omenihu gets a sack. George Karlaftis gets a sack. Mike Dana gets a sack. Willie Gay gets a sack. Drew Tranquil got a sack. Like, it was just all around complimentary team defense. And that's just what you want to see from these guys. Like, that's what was so impressive. And you mentioned Charles Omenihu. In his first game, Charles Omenihu looks really good. He looked like he's going to be a significant part of that Chiefs defensive line in this pass rush. Like, other teams should be scared right now. Opposing offensive lines are like, wait, they got Chris Jones and they just added this dude, number 90, out of nowhere off of a 6-game suspension. Like, what is he doing there? Like, their defensive line was already creating havoc. Like, that George Karlaftis dude been really good this season. Mike Dana's been really good this season. Like, and then Omenihu comes in, immediately makes an impact. He's swatting balls at the line of scrimmage, gets a sack early on. Like, he just looked like he is going to be an absolute monster for them. And they've got a guy who can legitimately play inside, but has legit athleticism too. Like, he's not just an interior run stuffing defensive lineman. Like, he is a highly athletic pass rusher that they can rotate inside and outside, along with Chris Jones, who has become this incredibly effective edge rusher at times, and Mike Dana, who can play inside and outside, and George. Like, the Chiefs pass rush has a chance to be devastating, and we haven't even seen the best version of it yet. Like, they were great today, and I still don't think that we've seen the ceiling of this thing yet, Rocky.
No, I don't think we have. I think because Amenity is going to continue to get better as he comes back. I think that anytime you add a pass rush like that into the mix, you got to. It does take time for it to fully gel. I think that this team is ascending. You mentioned Brian Cook a little bit. I think that Mike Edwards is outplaying Brian Cook in the back end in coverage. I love Brian Cook. I'm a huge Brian Cook supporter. I think you have Brian Cook within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. He's a better defender than Mike Edwards. He's better in run defense. He's going to come up. He's that enforcer. He's going to make guys pay for trying to go across the middle. Like, that is who Brian Cook is. Who Brian Cook is not is man-on-man coverage and single high when he got smoked in the first half. Like, you don't want Brian Cook in man coverage and single high, right? You know, he's going to get beat every single time. And so that's where you want Mike Edwards back there. I think so. It's all situational on who you have back there. I don't think it's one guy or the other guy. I think it's all three safeties, and you use them situationally and you rotate them in and out. And you saw the Chiefs cornerbacks have a little bit of trouble in the first half. Like Trent McDuffie didn't have the best first half of football, played really good in the second half. Jerry Sneed looked really good pretty much across the board today. And how about Jalen Watson running dudes down right from behind? Like we forget he is legit 4.3 speed. We forget because he's so tall, but he is one of the fastest cornerbacks in the NFL, and he's long. And
he was banged up this week in practice too. Legitimate, game time decision as to whether or not he was going to play.
Yeah, he is just snatching guys from behind and keeping them from getting first downs. I mean, and so this defense is only going to get better. Like we know this about Spags defenses. Early in the season, they usually look pretty shaky. They've looked good so far. So what are they going to look like come playoff time? Like, this could like the rest of the NFL should be worried about hitting 21 points on this team. Like, I don't if you score 21 points on the Chiefs moving forward, you should be patting yourselves on the back, because I don't see it happening very often. Maybe the Miami Dolphins will probably do it. Beyond that, I think teams are going to struggle.
And, I don't want to, obviously it's not Dolphins week, but like, we saw the Miami Dolphins one loss this season was against the Buffalo Bills. And, the Bills obviously lose to the Patriots. They're 4-3 right now. And the Bills, the last 2 weeks offensively have just looked like a train wreck. Like, if I was a Bills fan, I'd be really concerned about their offense much more than anybody should have ever been concerned about the Chiefs offense right now. But when the Bills beat the Dolphins, it was because they were generating all kinds of pressure on Tua. And that's how you slow down Miami. And Miami still wound up putting up some points in that game because they're too explosive to totally shut them down. But what the Chiefs are going to be able to do against their offensive line, if you put pressure on Tua Tagovailoa, that's when he starts to fade. And that's when, because Tua's not athletic enough to get outside the pocket and really create plays downfield with his arm, because he doesn't have a particularly strong arm. Like, that's how you beat the Miami Dolphins. That's how you beat top tier NFL offenses. And we've got a huge Sunday night football showdown tonight between the Dolphins and the Eagles that I'm really excited for, because I'm eager to see what the Eagles do against the Dolphins, because we've got the Eagles later on in the season. And that's the matchup that I'm like really, really like, okay, we got an opportunity here where the Eagles defense is legitimately good. Their defensive line is legitimately good. Their offensive line's great. But I think the Chiefs can go toe to toe with them in a way that they couldn't even do that last year. And they beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Like, this performance today, just it once again just emphasizes that Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, we should not be too worried about the offense, because they're probably going to have another bad game here in the near future. Like, I wouldn't be shocked by it at all, where they struggle to move the ball and it's just not working the way. But that's what happens when you have so many young players and when you're still trying to gel. Today was a huge step in the right direction for them offensively, and did nothing but make me just buy in even more to what the Chiefs are doing defensively. Like, at 6-1 right now, they are one of the absolute best teams in all of the NFL. And I mean, at the very least, they're like the second or third best team in football. And I think that they're closing the gap between them and anybody else that you want to make a case that's playing better football than the Chiefs right now.
Oh, 100%. And you're absolutely right. There's going to be weeks where the offense doesn't click. The Chiefs are probably going to win 14-3 next week. Watch. They come out, they put 31. They scored 31 this week
I don't want to
because
show
they knew
anything
they're
before the Dolphins. It's the
yeah,
Broncos.
exactly. Exactly. They knew that they had to score points to beat Justin Herbert and the Chargers. They didn't want to mess around. They didn't want to, give the Chargers a last second chance to win the game. They knew they were going to have to score 31 to beat the Chargers. They got to score 14 to beat the Broncos. Like they're not going to show anything before Miami. So we may be concerned about it, yada, 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 before they face the Dolphins. But two quick things really quick. I also want to hit on is with Mecole Hardman, sometimes you don't know what you got until it's gone, and all you need is a second chance. Like we all have those moments in our lives where we had an awesome opportunity that we kind of pissed away. And we always thought to ourselves, if I just had a second chance to get back in that situation, to get back in that building, to go back and do it all over again, I do all these things differently, and I would be better next time, right? Like we all have had that situation. And Mecole Hardman has that chance right now, and I don't think it's lost on him. I think he left Kansas City and quickly realized how good he had it here, and he immediately missed it and immediately wanted it back, and now he has it back. And the other thing, really quick, that I want to touch on and give my kudos to the Chiefs' offensive line. I don't think we gave them enough credit earlier in the game. Like the Chargers have a legitimate pass rush. They have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and Tuli Tuipulotu. Like those guys, all three guys are legitimate pass rushers. And they, with the exception of one sack, like Mahomes was operating pretty cleanly the entire day. Like our offensive line really stepped up in this game and kept Mahomes clean. And so hats off to the big guys too.
And the one sack that they gave up, the Chargers had to bring everybody. Like Chargers had to blitz the hell out of him to get to him that time. So I agree with you. And Rocky, like, let's say Mecole Hardman has, minimal role offensively moving forward this season, but he is their full-time return man. And he was on punts and kicks today, which that's where I want him. That's exactly what I want the Chiefs to do with him. It's exactly how I want him utilized. Like, if he looks like he is all of a sudden the most explosive kick returner in the NFL and like rips off a couple of touchdowns, like I'd be fine with the Chiefs bringing him back just to be the return guy. Like they desperately need somebody like that. And that's his best role as an NFL player. So it only took us several years to get here. But if that's the only role that he has on this team, I'm totally fine with the Chiefs keeping him around because he is a good locker room guy. He is a well-liked player in the Kansas City Chiefs organization. So like that's what he does best. And we've known that for a while now. So keep using him that way and giving him opportunities to produce.
Well, Dante Hall's considered a Chiefs legend, and that's all he ever did was kick return for us, right? Like you could get yourself in the hearts and minds of Chiefs fans really fast as an awesome kick returner.
All right, let's get to the comments and observations before we get out of here. Chiefs take down the Chargers 31-17, improved to 6-1 in a just dominant second half performance, but overall probably the best performance of the Chiefs season. You always think a guy who's sidelined for 6 weeks may be rusty with the speed of the game, but Amenahu was so impressive. Yeah, I don't know if he could have done much else today for me to be any more impressed with how he played. Like I was cautious about him coming in because being on the shelf for 6 weeks due to a suspension, and he's not even like practicing with the team. Like it's on him to make sure that he stays in shape and that he's training and ready to go as soon as he gets an opportunity to get back onto the football field. And he did that, and he looked great today. And just the collection of talent that the Chiefs have along that defensive line right now is as good as it's going to get. Like their defensive line is a problem. And I'm really excited to see how this thing continues to progress and how Charles Omenihu continues to fit into all that.
Well, yeah. And I think you come in a situation, you signed a huge free agent contract in the offseason, and then you're immediately hit with a 6-game suspension and you're on the shelf. And this is your first chance back with your new team where you have an opportunity to show that you're worth the contract that you signed. Like you got to feel like he has a chip on his shoulder. I know I'd have a chip on my shoulder. I took this huge contract and I've been off the field. I see my team out there playing every single week and I'm not able to help them. And you want to get in and you want to prove to everybody that you're as good as your contract says you are. And he came in, and to his credit, man, he stepped up and he showed everybody that thus far the returns are solid. And man, like you said, like opposing offense has got to be scared.
And real quick, we almost forgot to mention this. We'll get back to that comment here in just a second. But Nick Bolton did leave this game with an apparent wrist injury, and Andy Reid did just tell the media at Arrowhead that Nick Bolton dislocated his wrist. They're working on it now, according to head coach Andy Reid. They don't have an update on it, but they'll know more hopefully tomorrow or later on this week. Obviously, that could be a significant injury. Nick Bolton's already missed some time this season. The Chiefs are deep at the linebacker position, but we know that he is one of the key members of that defense. So it's a huge bummer to know that he suffered a significant injury, but hopefully it's not something that's going to keep him out a super extended period of time or something like that.
Yeah, hopefully he's able to bandage it up, do a little bit of a club thing, get back in the game.
Yeah, we'll see. For a player who's continued to look like he is such an important part of that defense, hope Nick Bolton gets back on the field soon. From Nikita, the most uncomfortable game for a while. I don't know what you're talking about. I had a great time. I had a blast throughout the entirety of this game, even in the first quarter when it was back and forth. I've been missing that. I've been missing the back and forth Chiefs offensive output game. So I loved every minute of this game. I was on board with absolutely all of it.
You love to see in the fourth quarter that look on Patrick Mahomes' face after they scored that dagger touchdown that just ended the game. Like that you woke up the wrong MFer look on his face that he gets against division opponents. And yeah, I thought the game was fun, man. You're right. The first half, sure, it's a little back and forth, but you got to think that in the end of the first half when the Chiefs scored points and then you knew that it was game at that point. The Chiefs are gonna close it out. You got faith in Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And the Chargers are going to charge you the game away. That's the one thing is you can never underestimate the AFC West opponent's ability to shoot themselves in the foot on a consistent basis. Like AFC West teams, aside from the Chiefs, have a remarkable ability to just snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, right? Like they just shoot themselves in the foot on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Unreal by the Los Angeles Chargers today as they continue to just flounder. From Dave, sure wish 38 seconds of the Browns Colts game hadn't eaten 8-11 in the first quarter of the Chiefs game. Yeah, I mentioned this already, Rocky. Here in Kansas City, for some reason, CBS decided that we had no choice but to watch the final minutes of that Browns Colts game. And what also made it more frustrating was the 38 seconds took forever because there kept being timeouts or injuries or penalties, and it took forever. And they were double boxing the Chiefs game, but they were playing the audio from that game. So you're sitting here watching the tiny Chiefs game as Justin Herbert and the Chargers are taking the field. And I was like, I don't care. I don't care about this game. It doesn't impact me in any way. It was very, very frustrating. I was very upset in the first quarter of that game.
I live in Tampa, Florida. Digital Pixel, I see the comments. You live in Florida too. We didn't get the Chiefs in a little box. We got full screen Colts Browns until the very end of the game. Every single ridiculous pass interference, every holding call that extended that garbage game because those two garbage teams that they were contractually obligated to show. We had to watch it until the very dying seconds, and it was literally like somebody just driving a nail through my eyeball in the slowest way possible, just like millimeter by millimeter, just tapping a nail through my eyeball watching that game. Oh, I could not stand it. At least you got it in a small screen. We didn't even get the double box. We just got full screen HD backup quarterback versus backup quarterback in a meaningless game for two teams that are going nowhere.
PJ Walker versus Gardner Minshew. Oh man, unreal. Instead of Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. But big win for the Kansas City Chiefs. They improved to 6-1. Still look like they are one of the best, absolute best teams in the NFL, sitting atop the AFC right now. And what's starting to get a little bit more crowded as we kind of see some other teams separate themselves from the pack, but the Chiefs still sit atop that pack in the AFC. And that is all that matters. Reminder, if you stick around after the commercial break on the podcast page, we've got all the post-game press conferences for you. Make sure you check out arrowheadpride.com for all of our post-game coverage, and we'll have everything you need to know ahead of the Chiefs Week 8 matchup against the Denver Broncos. You can follow Rocky on Twitter at Rocky Magaña. You can follow Kramer at Kramer Talks. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we are doing here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. I will be back tomorrow morning with another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Report with Pete Sweeney. We'll talk to you guys then.